Step away from that terminal. The quarterly run executes at midnight, and I am not letting a porter put his hands on it.
Then it runs wrong. Every song on tonight's statement is paying the wrong person.
The statements are final.
They are final and they are wrong. Both can be true. That song there, it shows a payout of 0. It earned 900 and change this quarter. The woman who sang it is 78 years old. An hour ago, I watched the preview print her a 0, so I called her and told her to drive down here tonight. Because after midnight, nobody in this building could fix it. She is in your parking lot right now.
You do not review royalty entries.
I cleaned this room. I also built the thing you are about to overwrite. Miss Devlin, there are 96 artists on tonight's run, and better than 200 songs, and almost every one of them is showing 0. You call that a rounding error. I call that a robbery with a receipt.
It is a migration variance. When we move a catalog this old onto the Halden platform, it's gonna have issues. Unmatched records fall out. They reconcile next cycle.
They do not reconcile. They vanish. There is a difference, and the difference has a name. A voice came from that doorway behind them, low and certain. An old woman's voice that had filled rooms bigger than this one. "That is the boy Wallace kept," Ruthie Weems said. She stood in the hallway light in a good coat. Last quarter's statement folded in one gloved hand, the one that had come to nothing too. Skinny thing nobody would hire. Wallace kept him. He built that ledger with his own 2 hands. She looked at Ezra the way you look at someone you buried a version of years ago. "Lord, you are still here." Sylvia looked from the old woman to the man in the gray work shirt to the notebook in his hand. "Why," she said slowly, "is the man who built this studio's royalty system pushing a broom through it at 11 o'clock at night?" Ezra did not answer that. Not yet. He kept his palm on the statements and his eyes on the clock above the console, which read 41 minutes to midnight. A ledger does not decide what a person is owed. It only records whether somebody was honest enough to write it down. Bellwether Sound sat at the end of a low industrial road, a long brick building with a heavy door and a wall of gold records inside that nobody dusted anymore. 30 years ago, it was a place where real voices came to be caught on tape. Wallace Selwyn had founded it, run it, loved it, and filled its front room with framed records that all carried the same small line in the corner, Bellwether Sound. The names of the singers were larger. That was the way Wallace had wanted it in the beginning. 3 months ago, Halden Music Group had bought the catalog, the building, and the debt, and had begun moving 212 songs off the studio's old system onto its own. Tonight, the migration would close. At midnight, the quarterly payout would run against the new numbers, and once it ran, the new numbers became the record of record. Everything before them would be, in the language of the platform, reconciled. In the front lounge, on a cracked leather couch beneath the gold records, an 11-year-old girl slept under her father's coat. Josie Hartwell had come to work with her father because there was no one at home to leave her with, and there had not been for 2 years. And Bellwether was the only place that had kept Ezra on after he stopped being who he used to be. She slept the hard sleep of a child who trusts that the adult in the next room has things handled. Ezra could see her through the glass. He kept his voice down for that reason as much as any other. "Read me the first entry on that stack," he said to Sylvia. "Out loud. The song, the artist, the amount. I am not going to perform for you." "Then read it for her." He nodded at the statement in Ruthie's hand. "Because she drove down here tonight, at 78 years old, because her check came to nothing again, and she deserves to hear a real number said out loud by the woman about to bury it." Sylvia's jaw tightened, but she pulled the top page and she read. Track 1. Performer, R. Weems. Composition, Long Way Home. Current quarter payable, $0. "Now the streams," Ezra said. "Same page, right column." Sylvia found it. She read it slower. "Streams this quarter, 260,000 and change." 260,000 plays, Ezra said, and a 0 next to her name. "You want to tell her that is a rounding error." He turned to the old woman. "Miss Ruthie, on Long Way Home, your split was 15 points on the master and half the writer's share. I said it myself. Wallace signed it, 1979. Ruthie's eyes went bright and hard. "That is right. That is exactly right." "Then the number is not lost," Ezra said. "The number is in my book, and it is in her memory, and it is on the tape in the back room in Wallace's own hand. The only place it is missing is the one screen that is about to pay everybody." Sylvia set the page down. For the first time, she looked at the notebook in his hand instead of the badge on her own chest. "Who are you?" she said. It was not the same question as before. "I am the man who used to keep this honest," Ezra said. "Now, open the reconciliation account. That is where I want you to look next." That was the thing about Ezra Hartwell that Halden had not put on any form. He did not guess. He asked short questions and gave short answers and let you watch him be right, one line at a time, until the being right stopped feeling like luck. "The reconciliation account is a holding bucket," Sylvia said. "It is where unmatched funds sit until they clear. It is normal. Every migration has one. I know. I am not asking what it is. I am asking you to open it and read me the balance." "Why?" "Because I already know what you are going to find, and I would rather you find it than take my word." Sylvia hesitated. Then she opened it. Ezra watched her face, not the screen. "There's money in it," she said. "How much?" "A lot," she scrolled. This is more than a variance. This is nearly the entire quarter." "Say the number." $640,000. She looked up. "The whole catalog's earnings are sitting in the reconciliation bucket." "And whose name is on the bucket?" She checked. She checked again. The way you read a thing twice when the first reading cannot be right. It routes to a Halden sub-account. Corporate, not the Artist Trust. "There it is," Ezra said quietly. "The money did not vanish. It got moved. Every dollar these people earned this quarter is sitting in a Halden account under a label that says unmatched, and at midnight, the payout runs zeros to the artists and leaves the $640,000 exactly where somebody parked it. After the run, the books say it was always meant to be there." He closed his notebook. "That is not a glitch, Miss Devlin. A glitch loses money. This money is not lost. It is somewhere very specific, doing exactly what it was told." The room was quiet enough to hear the tape machines ticking as they cooled in the back. "Sure, you are describing theft," Sylvia said. "I'm describing a migration that works perfectly," Ezra said. "That is what makes it good. Nothing broke. Everything ran. The only thing wrong is who ends up holding the money, and the platform does not have a column for wrong." Sylvia sat down slowly in the console chair. On the monitor, the reconciliation balance glowed, $640,000, 36 minutes from becoming permanent. Here is where a smaller story would have made Sylvia Devlin a villain. She was not one. She was a competent woman who had spent 11 years being handed systems and told to close them on schedule, and who had learned to trust the schedule because the schedule was the only thing that never lied to her. She looked at the balance, and the first thing she felt was not greed. It was fear. "If this is real," she said, "I cannot touch it. You are the migration lead. You are the only one who can touch it." "That is exactly why I cannot." She turned to face him. "Listen to me, because I do not think you have thought this all the way through, and I think you are too angry to. Suppose I believe you. Suppose every word is true. The moment I move that money back to the artists, I am not fixing an error. I am declaring that Bellwether's books were false, not this quarter, for 30 years. Because a split that was wrong tonight was wrong last year and the year before, back to whenever it started." "It started 9 years ago," Ezra said. "I can tell you the month." Sylvia stared at him. "Then you understand what I'm saying. If I open that door, every payment this studio ever made becomes disputable. Every estate lawyer's up. The catalog freezes in litigation, and a catalog in litigation pays no one, not this quarter and not for years. Miss Weems does not get her money. She gets a court date she may not live to see." Her voice was not unkind. That was the terrible part. "I have watched it happen. A catalog goes into a fight over the truth, and the only people who get paid are the attorneys, and the artists die waiting to be proven right. I would be handing these people the truth and taking away the money in the same motion. So your plan is to pay them nothing tonight to protect their right to nothing later. My plan is to run the schedule, flag the variance, and fight it slowly, in a way that does not detonate the whole catalog." She met his eyes. "I am not protecting Halden. I am protecting them from a truth that will bury them. There is a difference." And the worst of it, Ezra knew, was that she was not entirely wrong. That was the thing about the good arguments. They were never all lie. The cleanest way to keep a room full of honest people doing a quiet wrong was to hand them a reason that was 3/4 true and let their own decency do the rest. He looked through the glass at his daughter asleep under his coat, and for one long moment, the old thing rose up in him. The voice that had governed 9 years of him from the inside, and it sounded exactly like Sylvia Devlin. "Some truths do not save anyone. Let it lie. Take the quiet road. You have a child to think about." The old woman in the doorway was watching his face like she could hear it. Ezra Hartwell had a wound, and the wound had a shape, and the shape was a man he had loved. 9 years ago, Bellwether was 3 weeks from closing. The distributors had changed the terms, the money had stopped coming, and Wallace Selwyn, who had built the place and hired a skinny kid nobody else would take and taught him every honest thing he knew about how a song makes money, had sat in that same console chair and made a decision. He had quietly moved the splits. He had shaved points off the artists who were too old to check, or too gentle to fight, or too grateful to imagine the man would ever do it. And he had used the difference to keep the lights on and the doors open and the young engineers paid. Ezra had found it in the books because Ezra had built the books, and the books could not hide from the man who built them. He had brought the pages to Wallace with his hands shaking. And Wallace, who was not a monster, who wept when he said it, had asked for time. 1 year. Get us through, and I will pay every dollar back with my own name on the check. Give me the chance to make it right. Then Wallace Selwyn's heart had stopped on a Tuesday in the parking lot, and the year never came. And the debt and the secret both fell to the only other man who knew. What Ezra had done with that secret was a thing he had not yet said out loud to anyone. Not tonight. Not for 9 years. It was coming, but it was hers to pull out of him. Not his to confess into the dark. 9 years, and here was the reckoning, 30 minutes from midnight, wearing a good coat and asking for a check. Mr. Hartwell? Sylvia's voice pulled him back. I am going to run the schedule. I have to. I am sorry for these people. I mean that. But the responsible thing and the thing you want are not the same thing tonight. The console phone lit up. She glanced at it and something in her posture changed, the small straightening of a person whose boss is calling. That will be Kettner, she said. Who is Kettner? Alton Kettner. He runs catalog integration for Halden. He is the reason this migration is on the schedule it is on. She reached for the phone. He will want confirmation that we ran clean. Do not tell him what you found. I am not going to lie to my... Not lie. Just do not hand the man who built the bucket the news that somebody looked inside it. Ezra's voice was flat and fast. Ask yourself one thing before you pick up. $640,000 routes to a corporate sub-account on a schedule he set, closing at a time he chose, on a catalog full of old artists who do not check their statements. You keep saying migration variance. Ask yourself who benefits from the variance, and then ask yourself why he is calling you personally at 11:30 at night about a routine job. The phone rang. Sylvia looked at it. She did not pick it up. That was the first crack. Not because she believed Ezra yet, because she had just asked herself a question she could not unask, and the answer was standing in the reconciliation account with 6 figures on it. The phone stopped ringing. A moment later, it buzzed with a message. Sylvia read it aloud without meaning to, the way you read a thing that surprises you. Confirm migration locked by 11:45. Do not hold for exceptions. Exceptions are my problem, not yours. She set the phone down. He has never once told me not to hold for exceptions. The whole job is holding for exceptions. Now you are asking the right question, Ezra said. A studio like this puts the label's name on the door in gold and pays the voice that built it in pennies, and then it calls the difference the cost of doing business. The clock over the console read 26 minutes. Nobody in the room was looking at it except Ezra, who never stopped. Ruthie Weems came into the room then. She walked the way she had walked onto stages, slow and straight, and she stopped in front of the console and looked at the number on the screen. And then she looked at Ezra. How long? She said. 9 years, Miss Ruthie. And here, at last, was the part he had never said. 9 years ago, he had found Wallace's theft in the books he had built himself, and he had brought the pages to the man with his hands shaking, and Wallace had wept and begged for a year to make it right, and then Wallace had died and left him holding all of it. And Ezra had stayed quiet. He had loved the man too much to make him a thief in death, and he had feared what the truth would do, and both were real, and neither had ever paid this woman $1. He had walked himself down to the night shift, a sentence he handed himself, and kept a true set of books in the notebook in his pocket, and mailed small checks out of his own thin wages to 2 of the artists over the years, a teaspoon against a flood because bailing was the only prayer his hands knew. 9 years of keeping it true where nobody could see, and the person it was truest about had just walked in the door. 9 years, you knew. It was not a question, and it was not quite an accusation. It was a woman doing arithmetic on her own life. I called this studio. After Wallace passed, I called and I said my checks were wrong, and a nice young man on the phone told me it was being looked into. Her eyes did not leave his face. That was you. That was me. You told me it was being looked into. I did, and it never was. She nodded slowly, absorbing it, and the nod was worse than shouting. You had a good reason, I expect? A man like you always has a good reason. Wallace had a good reason, too. Everybody in my whole long life who ever short paid me had a reason, and every one of them slept fine, and I am 78 years old, and I am still driving down here at night to ask for my own money." Ezra could not look at her. He looked at his daughter through the glass instead, and the words came out of him the way the old road always called quiet and reasonable and rotten. "Ms. Ruthie, some truths do not fix anything. If I tear the top off this tonight, the whole thing goes to court, and you know how that ends better than I do. I have got a little girl asleep in that room. I cannot. Do not." Ruthie's voice cut clean across his. "Do not you dare put that child between me and my money. I raised 3 of my own on nothing while men like Wallace kept my nothing. You want to talk to me about a child to think about?" She leaned in. 9 years ago, you said the same thing you are saying right now. Not those words. That tune. It is being looked into. There is a right way and a slow way. Trust me and be patient. I trusted you and I was patient, and here we both are. She straightened. "I am not asking you to protect me, son. I am asking you to stop protecting everybody except me." The room held still, and Ezra Hartwell heard his own mistake come back to him in an old woman's voice, and understood that he had not demoted himself to the night shift out of penance. He had done it to hide. A man doing penance pays the debt. A man hiding just stays close to it and calls the staying a kind of payment. A ledger does not decide what a person is owed. It only records whether somebody was honest enough to write it down. He had written it down. He had kept it true in a book in his pocket for 9 years. He had just never once been brave enough to open the book in front of the person it was true about. Through the glass, Josie slept on under his coat. He had taught her those same 3 words, the ones Wallace had written in the front of the notebook. Keep it true. He said it to her over spelling homework and over a card game she wanted to quit and over every small daily place a child learns what her own word is worth. He had spent 2 years teaching his daughter to do the one thing he had spent 9 years being too afraid to do himself. And it landed on him all at once, plain as a struck note, that a man cannot hand a child a rule he keeps folded in a drawer. Not that child. Not that rule. If he ran the quiet road tonight, he would go home and keep teaching her a thing he had just proven he did not believe. If you have ever kept something true where no one could see it and paid quietly for the keeping, you already know the weight this man is under. Send this to the person in your life who does the right thing when nobody is counting. They should hear how it ends. 22 minutes, Sylvia said quietly. She was watching them both now, and the fear in her had shifted into something more like grief. Whatever this is going to be, it has 22 minutes to be it. Ezra put his notebook on the console, next to her keyboard. He opened it to the page with Ruthie's name. "Then let me show you a third way," he said, "because you are both right and you are both wrong, and there is a door neither of you is looking at." He had thought about this door for 9 years. He had never had the standing to open it, or the courage, or the moment. He had all 3 now for exactly 22 minutes, which was the cruel arithmetic of every reckoning. It arrives only when it is almost too late to matter. "Miss Devlin, you said if you move the money you are declaring 30 years of books false, and the catalog freezes, and everyone lawyers up. You are right if you do it as a dispute. A dispute is a fight about the past." He tapped the notebook. "But this is not a dispute. This quarter's money never reached the artists. It is sitting in the reconciliation account right now, tonight, unpaid, still assignable. You do not have to reopen 30 years to pay this quarter correctly. You just have to run this quarter against the real splits instead of the empty ones before midnight, from the money that is already sitting there." Sylvia stared at him. "That is not a fix for the theft. That is 1 quarter. It is 1 quarter paid to the right people out of the exact account somebody used to hide it. It does not accuse Wallace of anything. It does not reopen a single old check. It just refuses to let this one payout run wrong." He looked at her. "And the record of it, the override, becomes a document. A permanent one. That $640,000 went out to 96 named artists in the last minutes before midnight instead of into a corporate bucket. Nobody can call that reconciled. You are not opening the fight. You are leaving 1 honest page in the book so that when the fight does come, and it will, somebody after us can find the night the numbers finally told the truth." The silence stretched. "I would need to enter a manual override on 96 lines against the real splits," Sylvia said. It was not a no. It was a person walking the length of a thing to see if it held her weight. "I do not have the real splits. Halden overwrote them in the migration. You do not have them." Ezra put his hand on the notebook. "I have them. Everyone. And she can confirm hers, and the tape boxes in the back confirm the rest, because Wallace wrote the splits on the boxes in 1979 when he still meant them." He slid the notebook toward her. "You put in the numbers. I read them to you. She witnesses. That is 3 people saying the same thing at the same time, which is the only thing a ledger has ever been. A notebook is not evidence, Sylvia said. A handwritten notebook by the man who has the most reason to want these numbers changed is the weakest possible source. If this ever goes in front of anyone, they will throw it out in a sentence. Then do not take my word, take his. Ezra was already moving toward the back hallway. Come with me. Bring the statement for Long Way Home. You're going to want to see this yourself, because after you do, you cannot unsee it. And I need you to be sure before you touch that key. The back room of Bellwether smelled of dust and warm iron and old tape. Shelves ran floor to ceiling, boxes of quarter-inch masters in their paper sleeves, everyone labeled by hand. Ezra went to the shelf marked 79 without looking, the way a man finds a thing in his own house in the dark, and pulled a flat box and set it under the work light. Read the spine, he said. Sylvia read it. Long Way Home, R. Weems. Then, under it, in a different column, a set of small handwritten figures. Read the numbers. 15 and 50. She looked up. That is the same as the notebook. That is not the notebook. That is Wallace Selwyn's hand on the master from 1979 before any of this. He wrote the true split on the box the day he cut the song, because that is how you did it then. You wrote it where the music was so nobody could argue later. Ezra turned the box so the light caught the ink. The migration overwrote the database. It could not reach into this room and change what a dead man wrote on a piece of cardboard 40 years ago. The truth has been sitting on this shelf the whole time. Nobody came back here. Why would they? It is just where the janitor keeps the old tape. Sylvia put her fingers on the handwriting the way Ruthie had touched her own name earlier, carefully, like it might be warm. The numbers on the boxes match your book, she said. Everyone. 96 songs, 96 boxes, one honest man's handwriting on all of them, from back when he was still honest. Ezra picked up the box and held it. So it is not my word against Halden's, it is a dead founder's own hand against a migration that overrode him. You are not dispersing on a janitor's notebook. You are dispersing on the master's. That will hold anywhere. Sylvia looked at the wall of boxes, hundreds of them, a whole catalog of the truth written where the music was, and something in her arithmetic finished. Bring the box, she said. Bring as many as you can carry. We are going to want them on the table when I do this. Sylvia looked at the notebook back on the console. She did not pick it up yet. If I do this, she said, I am finished at Halden. You understand that. Kettner will not call it insubordination. He will find a clean reason, but I will be finished. Yes, you are not going to pretend I will not be. No, Ezra said. You will be finished there. I am not going to lie to you to get your hand on the key. That is the whole thing we are trying to stop tonight. People getting told a comfortable lie so somebody else can move the money. He held her eyes. You will lose the job. They will lose their money if you do not. Those are the two real things. Everything else is noise. It was the not lying that did it. She had been managed her whole career by men who told her the comfortable version, and here was a janitor telling her the expensive truth to her face and letting her choose it anyway, and something in her that had been asleep as long as the girl on the couch woke up. The phone rang again. Kettner. Sylvia looked at it, and this time she reached over and turned it face down without looking at the screen. Read me the first split, she said, and pulled the keyboard toward her. Miss Ruthie, Ezra said, come stand where she can hear you. This part needs a witness, and it ought to be you. Ruthie Weems came and stood at the old woman's exactly correct distance, close enough to see the screen, and put one gloved hand on the back of the console chair. What followed was the plainest thing in the world, and the hardest, and it went the way real work goes, in short exchanges, one line at a time. Long Way Home, Ezra read. Performer share, 15 points. Writer share, 50% to R. Weems. 15 and 50, Sylvia said, typing. Confirmed, said Ruthie. That is mine. Next, Coldwater Morning. Performer, 12 points. Writer split 3 ways, 1/3 to Weems. 12 and a third, Sylvia said. Confirmed. That one Wallace produced, Ruthie said quietly, watching the number appear. He cried in the booth. Said it was the best thing the room ever caught. She shook her head. And he shaved 2 points off me on it the next winter. Ezra kept reading. He did not stop at that, because there were 94 lines to go, and the arithmetic did not care about grief. But he heard it. They all heard it. The man who had saved him and robbed her in the same pair of hands. Next, Bright Street. Performer 10, writer full to Weems. 10 in full, Sylvia said. That one I have heard. My mother had that record. Everybody's mother had that record, Ruthie said. It bought Wallace his second car. It bought me a winter coat. They worked. Short lines, quick confirmations, the clock coming down. A song, a split, a number appearing where a 0 had been. Next, tell me plain, 12 and a third. 12 and a third. Confirmed, that is mine too. Halfway through the block, a small sound came from the doorway. Josie stood there in her sock feet, her father's coat still around her shoulders, rubbing one eye, pulled out of sleep by voices. Dad, who are all these people? Ezra did not stop reading numbers, but he put out one hand toward her the way you steady a thing without looking at it. Working late, Joe. This is Miss Ruthie. She sang half the records on that wall out there. Josie looked at the old woman. The gold ones? The gold ones, baby, Ruthie said, and something in her voice went gentle for the first time all night. Go on back and sleep. Your daddy is doing a right thing. It is taking him a while because right things do. The girl studied the room a moment longer. The screen, the boxes of tape stacked on the console, the woman in the good coat. Then she padded back to the couch, and the small, ordinary trust of it, a child going back to sleep because her father said to, sat in the room like a weight and a mercy at once. Keep going, Sylvia said softly. We are close. They worked. Most of the catalog repeated in blocks, the same 15 and 50 running down a dozen of Ruthie's sides, the same 12 and a third across a whole run of the trio records, so Sylvia stopped entering them one at a time and started applying them to a block of songs at once, the way you pay a whole street the same rate instead of arguing each house. That was the only reason 96 lines could move in the minutes they had. Ezra read the splits off the true book. Sylvia batched the ones that matched and hand-entered the ones that did not. Ruthie confirmed the sides she had sung and vouched for the tape on the rest. And the clock came down, and block by block the $640,000 stopped being a hidden thing and became a column of pending payments to named people. At 14 minutes to midnight, the door opened without a knock, and a voice that had only ever been a phone became a man. Alton Kettner was younger than his authority and calmer than the moment, and he came in already talking, the way men come into rooms they own. Sylvia, the run is late. I have been calling. He took in the scene, the old woman, the janitor, the notebook, the override screen glowing with manual entries. His calm did not break, but it set. What is this? This is the quarter running correctly, Sylvia said, and kept typing. Stop entering. Kettner did not shout. His voice was pleasant and final. Whatever this man has told you, you are about to do something you cannot undo, on a catalog you do not fully understand, on the word of a maintenance contractor and a... Choose the next word carefully, Ruthie said. Kettner chose not to say it. He turned to Sylvia. The reconciliation account is a routine holding structure. Unmatched funds sit there until legal review. Kettner spread his hands, reasonable. You are about to disperse $600,000 out of a controlled account to a list of names a janitor assembled from a notebook. The names are correct, Sylvia said, but her hands had slowed. Maybe they are. It does not matter. If you are wrong on one line, Halden claws the whole thing back. These people get a payment, then a demand for its return, and you personally are liable for the disbursement. He let that land. You want to protect them. What you are about to hand them is a check that bounces and a lawsuit on top of it. Then Kettner turned to Ezra, unhurried, and lowered his voice the way you lower it to say the private thing. And you have a contract with this studio, Mr. Hartwell. You have a little girl who likes coming to work with you at night. You have a Monday to get to, same as everyone in this room. His face stayed pleasant. So be very sure this is your hill, because I promise you it is not going to be mine, and one of us goes home to a child tonight. The room went cold at that. Josie was 20 feet away through the glass, and everyone had heard exactly what had just been set on the table. It was good. It was very good, because it was almost true. And Ezra watched Sylvia's hands slow on the keys, and he understood that Kettner had just done to her the exact thing Ezra had done to Ruthie for 9 years. Handed her a reason to stop that wore the coat of protecting the very people she would be abandoning. There it is, Ezra said, and his voice did not shake, which surprised even him. You just did the whole trick in one breath. Threaten my job, name my daughter, and call it looking out for me. That is the house style. Wallace was good at it. I was good at it for 9 years. He set himself between Kettner and the glass, between the man and the sleeping child. So let me ask you the one question that ends it. Your own words. The money in that account is unmatched, waiting for legal review. Yes? That is what it is. Then it does not belong to anyone yet, which means it costs you nothing to let it go to the artists who earned it, because if you are right, you claw it back tomorrow with a phone call. Ezra took one step toward him. So tell the room. Say that money leaving that account tonight costs Halden nothing, because it was never Halden's. Say it, and she stops typing. Kettner said nothing. He said nothing for 1 second and then 2, and the nothing was the loudest thing in the room, because a man defending a routine holding account would have said, of course, claw it back, no harm, run your little override, and instead, Alton Kettner stood in the doorway and did the arithmetic on what it would cost him for $640,000 to walk out the door to the people it belonged to, and everyone watched him fail to say it did not matter. That is what I thought, Ruthie said softly. 9 minutes, said Sylvia, and resumed typing, faster now. Kettner moved towards the console. Ruthie Weems, 78 years old, stepped once to her left and put herself between the man and the keyboard, and did not move, and made of her small, straight body a thing he would have to physically remove in front of 2 witnesses. You're going to want to think, she said to him, about whether you are the kind of man who puts his hands on an old woman in a room with this many people watching, because that is the only way you reach that keyboard now, through me. And I have been moved out of my own money my whole life by men who never once had to touch me to do it. You would have to touch me. She lifted her chin. Go on and decide who you are. Kettner stopped. 6 minutes, Sylvia said. Ezra, the last block. Read fast. Cut time. Performer, 10 points. Full writer to Weems. Backroad Gospel. Performer split 4 ways. Name them off the tape box. It is on the shelf marked 79. Ezra's voice went into the short, hard cadence of a man calling a race. Girl in the photograph, 15 and 50. Evening train, 12 and a third. Last one, Long Way Home reprise, same as track 1, 15 and 50. 15 and 50, Sylvia said. That is 96. That is all of them. Her hand hovered over the execute key. She looked up once, at the man in the gray shirt and the old woman standing guard and the girl asleep through the glass. This runs against the real splits. Once I press this, it disperses. There is no holding it after. Then hold nothing, Ezra said. Run it true. Sylvia Devlin pressed the key. The screen did not do anything dramatic. That was the thing about the honest version. It just processed, a quiet cascade of 96 lines flipping from pending to sent, $640,000 leaving a corporate bucket and landing, in amounts large and small and 9 years overdue, in the accounts of 96 people who had made the songs that paid for the gold on the walls. At 2 minutes to midnight, the quarterly run executed on top of it and found nothing left to move because the money was already home. Alton Kettner watched the reconciliation balance drop to 0 and understood that whatever he had built into that account was now a public disbursement with 96 witnesses and a manual override log with a name and a timestamp on it, and that the story he could tell tomorrow had gotten very much smaller. You have made a serious mistake, he said to Sylvia. It was all he had left. I made a payment, she said. You made the mistake. I just stopped filing it. Kettner left the way such men leave without raising his voice, already on his phone to people who would spend the next long while learning that a routine holding account had been emptied to the people whose names were on the songs, and that there was a document, and that the document was true. For a moment, nobody in the room said anything. The screen glowed with 96 lines that all read sent. Sylvia Devlin sat back in the console chair and looked at her own hands. I'm going to lose my house before I lose the feeling that I just did the first real thing in 11 years, she said. Is that insane? No, Ezra said. I keep waiting to panic. It is not coming. It will. In the morning, probably. He stacked the tape boxes gently, squaring their edges. But it will come in second. The first thing you will feel tomorrow is that Ruthie Weems got paid, and you were the one who pressed the key. That does not go away. I have spent 9 years learning what does and does not go away. He set the last box down. The money you can hide goes away. The night you refuse to hide it does not. You get to keep that one. It is a strange kind of pay, but it spends. Sylvia almost laughed. You sound like a man who has done this before. I have done the opposite before, Ezra said. For 9 years. I am new to this side. You beat me to it by about 5 minutes tonight. He looked at her. That is not nothing, Miss Devlin. It took me nearly a decade to do what you did in 20 minutes with your whole career on the table. Do not let anybody, including yourself, tell you tomorrow that it was reckless. It was the opposite of reckless. It was the most careful thing in this building. You paid attention to the one thing everybody else was trained to skip. She sat with that. Then she began quietly to make copies. The state would come later, because a disbursement log that clean is its own kind of witness. And because Sylvia Devlin, before she left Halden, made 3 copies of it and mailed one to an office that reads such things, what they would find in the slow way these things get found was a model. Buy an old catalog full of old artists who do not check. Migrate it. Let the unmatched funds fall into a reconciliation account. Close the quarter. Call the difference reconciled. repeated across every catalog you own, and no single artist ever earns enough for a lawyer, and the arithmetic works forever. Until one night in one studio, the one man they had reduced to a janitor turned out to be the one man who had kept the true count. This is the place a softer story would lie to you. Ezra Hartwell had no softer story left in him. He was not restored. There was no scene where Halden apologized and gave him back his title. Bellwether Sound, its founder's name now attached to a 9-year-old theft that the Knight's document made impossible to keep buried, went into exactly the uncertainty Sylvia had warned about. The catalog would be fought over. The studio might not survive it. Wallace Selwyn, the man who had saved Ezra's life and stolen Ruthie's living with the same pair of hands, was no longer only the man on the plaque by the door. He was both things now, forever, out loud, and Ezra was the one who had said the second thing, and he would carry having said it. That was the price, and it was a real one, and he paid it in full. But some things happened that no reconciliation account will hold. Ruthie Weems checked her phone in the parking lot and stood very still, and then laughed once, a short surprise sound, at a number that had not been right in 9 years, finally being right. Sylvia Devlin, unemployed as of the morning, walked out of Bellwether lighter than she had walked into it, which made no sense on paper and perfect sense to her. And Ezra Hartwell went into the front lounge under the gold records and knelt by the couch and woke his daughter with a hand on her shoulder the way you wake a child you would burn the world down for. "Time to go home, Joe." Josie sat up under his coat, blinking. "Did you finish the work?" "I finished some work." He gathered her up, half asleep, her cheek against his shoulder. On the wall above them, the gold records caught the light, all those larger names, all that smaller line in the corner. "Dad," she said, drowsy. "Whose room is all this?" Ezra looked at the wall a moment. "People who made something true," he said, "and got paid tonight." He carried her toward the door. He passed the console room where the screen still glowed with a log that could not be unwritten. He took the leather notebook out of his shirt pocket, the true book, 9 years of a debt he had been bailing with a teaspoon, and he looked at the inside cover, where Wallace Selwyn had written 3 words the day he hired a skinny kid nobody wanted, back when he still meant them. "Keep it true, son." Ezra had. For 9 years, he had kept it true in secret, which is the coward's true, the kind that costs you nothing because no one can see it. Tonight, he had kept it true out loud, in front of the woman it was true about, at the cost of the one man he had been protecting and the roof over his own head. He closed the book. He put it back in his pocket. It was not a secret anymore. It was just true. He did not take the title they were not offering. He did not ask for another artist's file. He was going to be, come Monday, if there was a Monday for Bellwether, the man who swept the floor, and he was going to be that on purpose now, which is a different thing than being it in hiding. A man can retreat to the same small place twice and have it mean the opposite thing, the second time, because the first time he was running from what he knew, and the second time he was standing in what he had finally said. Ruthie Weems was waiting by the door. She put her gloved hand briefly against the side of Josie's sleeping head, the way old women bless children without asking, and she looked at Ezra over the girl. "Wallace would be ashamed," she said, "and proud. Both. Same as the rest of us." She pulled her coat closer. "You keep that book, son. Some night some other room is going to need a man who wrote it down when nobody made him." "Yes, Miss Ruthie." "And Ezra." She was already turning toward her car, toward the first honest check in 9 years. "Come out from the back. You have been in the back long enough." He carried his daughter out into the cold, past the gold on the walls and the true log on the screen and the empty account that had finally, in the last minutes before midnight, paid the people whose voices had filled the room. He did not know if the studio would stand. He had not gotten his old life back, or his mentor's good name, or the quiet. But the songs had paid the people who made them. The book was true and it was open. And the man who kept it had finally, 9 years late, written his own name where anyone could read it. A ledger does not decide what a person is owed. It only records whether somebody was honest enough to write it down. Ezra Hartwell had been. At last, out loud, at the exact worst cost, he had been. If this story moved you, send it to someone who does honest work that nobody sees, and tell them somebody kept count.